We're halfway through the season, but there really isn't that much gold showing up. You know, time goes on, a lot of money being spent and no money being made.
A $500,000 truck nearly crushed a crew member as it dangled off a 15-foot cliff. One slip and it would have been gone for good. Tony Beets' operation came to a dead stop when a fully loaded side dump truck rolled off a narrow ridge. The machine teetered on the edge, frame twisting while chains snapped tight and ground shifted beneath them. Let us take you to the moment they found something that could shut Paradise Hill down for the rest of the season. A mine on hold. Out at Paradise Hill, Tony had just one wash plant running, the trommel. He was pushing it hard, dirt in, water out, round the clock. But all that water doesn't stay clean. The settling ponds, about 30 acres of them, were choked with silt. Thick, muddy stuff that sinks if given time, but time was something they didn't have. What came next would force Tony to make a call he swore he'd never make. If that dirty water spilled into the creek nearby, the whole show would be done. They needed to clean it up before it caused trouble. That meant making the ponds deeper so the dirt could settle before the water went back to the creek. To do that, they needed to build up the dikes, pile on more dirt, raise the edges, make the water sit longer. Mike and his crew got to work. They brought in the side dump truck, loaded it with dirt, and sent it out to the dike. The plan was simple. Dump the dirt, pack it down, keep going. But nothing ever goes as planned in the dirt. The truck rolled up, heavy with a full load. The road was narrow, too narrow. The back tire clipped the edge just a little bit, but with all that weight, a little was enough. The truck tilted. It didn't stop. It kept tipping, slow at first, then faster. The driver bailed out. That 10-ton side dumper ended up hanging off a drop that was about 15 feet deep. One wrong tug and it would be at the bottom. All work stopped. No one wanted to be near it. The thing looked like it could roll any second. They needed to get it back up, but it had to be careful. One mistake and it would take out everything in its path. Mike brought in the smaller excavator, hooked up a heavy chain, tried to pull it straight. The chain stretched, tight like a bowstring. The frame creaked. The ground under the machine shifted. It wasn't enough. Too much weight, too much tilt. They tried pulling from the front, they tried pulling from the side. Every angle came with a new problem. Not enough space, not enough reach. The truck wouldn't budge, and the longer it sat there, the more time was lost. That meant no gold. That meant falling behind. Mike called in the bigger excavator, the 480 machine. That one could lift up to 20 tons. He figured with double the power, maybe it would move. Still nothing. The weight wasn't just in the truck, it was the way it was sitting, half in the ditch, wheels stuck, frame twisted. They tried lifting one end, then the other. Still no luck. The truck was wedged tight. They started talking about unhooking the trailer, doing it in two pieces. That meant crawling underneath, in the mud, with that heavy thing hovering above. Not safe, but no real choice. They managed to pop the trailer loose first. That part was lighter, still took effort, still took time. They flipped it upright with a careful pull. Everyone stood back, no one trusted it. Next was the truck. That one was worse. Bigger, heavier, and sitting in a bad spot. They chained it from the front. Pulled slow. It rocked. It tilted. For a second, it looked like it might flip the other way and smash into the excavator. Mike backed off just in time. Close call. Inches from disaster. The chain held, the truck shifted, they kept pulling bit by bit, until finally the wheels were back on the dirt, still leaning but standing. Everyone stayed quiet, just relief. 2 days gone, dirt everywhere. But at least the truck was up. Now they could get back to work. The road still needed building, the dike still needed raising, the water was still dirty. They fired up the dozer, started laying down loads. Back to the job, but behind. Tony had been running just one plant. That meant pressure, big pressure. His season goal was 5,000 ounces. To stay on track, he needed more than 200 ounces a week. With just one plant and delays like this, that goal was slipping further away. After all that effort, they pulled in around 140 ounces. Just over that, actually. Worth more than $350,000. Not a bad number, but not enough. Every lost day meant lost gold, lost ground. Mike kept running loads. The trucks rolled in, dirt stacked up. The dike rose inch by inch. Water started to clear. It was working, but it took time. Time they didn't have, and the whole thing started with one bad tire placement. One missed edge, one heavy load at the wrong moment. That's how fast $500,000 almost ends up in the drink. While they were fixing the truck, the gold count sat at 0. No wash plant running, no dirt going through the trommel, no gold in the sluice. Just silence, chains, and excavators working overtime. The trailer wasn't damaged too badly. Bent in places, but nothing too serious. The truck got a quick check. Fluids, tires, frame. It started up. That was lucky. Could have gone worse. They hooked it back up, rolled it out. Back to dumping dirt. Back to building the road. Back to trying to keep the season alive. The crew moved fast. They had to. 2 days lost is a big deal. When gold's your paycheck, time is money. And they were running out of both. All eyes were on the water. Clear water meant they could fire up the trommel again. That was the goal. Get the plant running. Get the gold flowing. They finally reached a point where the settling ponds could handle the flow. The silt dropped to the bottom. The clean water ran over the top. Back to the creek. No more risk. With the plant running again, Tony needed to hit the numbers. That week had to count. They watched the sluice carefully. Each nugget, each flake, every gram mattered. They counted it up. 10, 20, 40, 80, over 100. They kept going. 110, 130, 143. It added up fast. That was over $350,000 worth of gold. But just when they got the plant humming again, a gold pan at a new spot changed everything. Fast. The permafrost problem. Tony isn't slowing down, not even with the ground frozen like a rock. It does not matter if the dirt is solid or soft, the guy still pulls in nearly $1 million just by keeping his operation grinding. It starts with a simple gold pan, a $2 pan, maybe a couple scoops, and there it is. That shine shows up. When they hit this new spot, it was not just a few specks. It was full of bright gold, maybe 15 or 20 colors flashing in the sunlight. Not giant nuggets, but good enough to stop everything and clear the area. That kind of pan makes a miner drop what he is doing and fire up the machines. Tony gets moving fast. The crew rolls in to tear down a new cut, strip the top layers, and lay out a pad for the wash plant. The new ground is a decent distance from the sluice boxes, too far to be hauling dirt all day and night with 5 trucks. That would waste fuel and time. Instead, the big decision is made to move the whole wash plant. This means dragging a massive chunk of steel nearly 1 mile down a road that is anything but smooth. One side is lined with trees. The other side drops steep into the creek, and the road itself tilts down toward that water. If the plant starts slipping, it is going straight into the creek and there is no pulling it back. Mike takes the lead running the dozer. He tries to keep the plant centered, away from the trees and away from the drop. It is slow. It is tense. The machine leans. The ground groans under the weight. Even though they widen the road, it is still a tight squeeze. The plant creeps left, close to the edge. You can see the tracks shifting, sliding just a little more with every push. The road was thrown together fast. There was no time to bury a culvert, which left the trail narrow and rough. When the big turn comes up, Mike cannot just yank the dozer around. He has to ease it, make wide moves, and hope the back end does not swing too far. The plant lurches, shifts, but keeps rolling. It slides close to a trailer sitting on the side, inches away, then just barely misses a pile of old gear. They finally get it parked, and it is a tight fit, but it is there. Now they need to get pay dirt. Mike gets back in his machine, starts scraping away, but something feels off. The blade hits the ground and it does not dig. It bounces. The dirt is not just hard, it is frozen, deep frozen. This is not surface frost. This is hard-packed permafrost that goes down feet, maybe more. Nobody saw this coming and it wrecks the plan. Frozen ground is bad news. That means no digging, no feeding the plant, and no gold running through the sluice. Everything stops. They try another part of the cut, but it is the same story. Ice under the surface, ground hard as concrete. Machines sit, crew waits, time ticks by. Tony has 2 wash plants ready to roll, but no loose dirt to run through them. All the plans for easy gold just froze solid. They were counting on this ground being ready. Now they are just waiting for it to thaw. And waiting is not cheap. Fuel burns. Wages still go out. The whole operation stalls. But even with everything iced up, Tony still managed to pull in big gold. They weigh up the last of the dirt from the comeback cut, and the numbers are not small. The first batch on the scale hits 75.6 ounces. That stack of gold is worth around $190,000. Then there is the second jar from Mike's plant up on Paradise Hill. That one has been chewing through dirt non-stop, even while the other side of the crew is frozen in place. The count climbs fast, 10 ounces, then 20, then 50, 100, 200. By the end, they are up to 374.34 ounces. That load is worth about $936,000. Add those together and it is just over $1 million, all while part of the crew is stuck waiting for dirt to thaw. Even with $1 million on the scale, all it took was one slipping belt to bring it to a grinding halt. Steel, sparks, and a race against the clock out at Paradise Hill, it only took about 10 scoops of pay dirt before everything came to a stop. Tony Beets' big old trommel, the one meant to chew through the dirt and spit out gold, just quit. The belt that feeds it all in had gone sideways again, drifting off to one side like it was trying to quit the job too. No dirt was moving, no rocks were getting washed, and that entire setup was just sitting there wasting time. Tony's whole operation was suddenly quiet, and not the good kind. When that belt shifts off to one side, it doesn't just make noise, it starts rubbing the frame, scraping against the metal edges. Keep that up too long and you end up with a hole big enough to lose dirt through. Nobody wants to dump pay dirt onto the ground. Mike stepped in to try and deal with it. He started messing with the adjustment rods, these long steel bars that are supposed to nudge the belt left or right depending on how tight you pull them. Mike grabbed a wrench and gave the rod a few solid turns. He figured a little tightening would push the belt back into place. Nothing happened. The belt just kept riding the edge like it was stuck. He gave it a few more turns, still nothing. Then he tried the other side, thinking maybe loosening would help. No dice. That belt didn't budge an inch. He stepped back, stared at the setup, and tried to figure out what was going on. It didn't make sense. He had done this before, and it usually worked. He crouched down and gave the whole frame a good look. That's when he spotted it. The whole conveyor was tilted. One end was lower than the other, and not by a little bit. That belt wasn't drifting because of tension. It was drifting because the whole thing was off balance. They had put this thing together fast the week before. Kevin, Mike's brother, was the one in charge of setting the feeder. He had bolted the legs in place and lined everything up, but clearly missed the mark. One of the main support columns, the one holding up the high end of the belt, was shorter than the other. Not by design, just a bad job with the leveling. Tony walked up to take a look himself. He didn't say much, just nodded like he'd seen this kind of mess before. Instead of pulling it all apart and wasting a full day, he decided to patch it up on the fly. He had done this kind of field repair plenty of times. When something breaks, you fix it quick and move on. That's the only way to keep the dirt moving. The plan was simple. Cut through the low support column, the one causing the lean, lift the conveyor with a crane until it sits level, then slide a stack of thick steel plates into the gap and weld them in place. That would bring the belt back to where it needed to be. They fired up the torch and started slicing through the crooked support. Sparks flew, metal hissed, and the column gave way. The belt shifted slightly, now free to move. Mike called over the crane operator and had him lift the top end of the conveyor. Slowly, inch by inch, it came up. They checked the level again and again, making sure it was flat. With the conveyor hanging in place, the crew ran over to the scrap pile and started digging through steel. They pulled out a few heavy plates, checking the thickness, stacking them together until the gap was nearly filled. Then they eased the conveyor back down onto the stack and checked again. Still not quite right. They lifted it back up, slid in another plate, and set it down again. This time, it looked even. Mike squatted down and ran his hand along the belt, checking the spacing on both sides. It was close enough. Brandon gave him the nod and they fired up the welder. One by one, they tacked the plates together, then burned a solid weld down each side. That stack of steel wasn't going anywhere. Now that everything was level, they fired up the trommel again. The belt ran true. Dead center, like it was supposed to. Dirt flowed into the wash plant, water sprayed across the screens, and the whole thing roared back to life. It had only been down for a few hours, but with just 8 weeks left in the mining season, every minute mattered. Tony needed that trommel running nonstop if he was going to make his goal. He needed close to 700 ounces of gold every single week or the whole plan would fall apart. The pit had to deliver, and now with the fix holding up, they were finally back in business. They let the machine run for a bit, feeding it a steady stream of pay dirt. The screens shook the rocks clean, the gold traps did their job, and after 3 solid days of running, they shut it down to do a cleanup. When they poured the gold into the pan, the scale ticked up fast. 10 ounces, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Then it settled just under 86 ounces. That cleanup was worth over $170,000. Not bad for a machine that was dead just a few days ago. The crew stood by, hands on hips, watching the gold pour into the container. No one said much. They just got back to work. Was 86 ounces enough to keep Tony's empire afloat? Or is the legendary Beets operation starting to crack? Like the video, leave your take in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.